this opportunity for play, for learning through play, for children to be creative, because it is when they are creative that they encounter problems, that they have to fix the problems, that they end up kind of talking to people sitting next to them, which forces them to articulate potential problems or conversations. So they're practicing their oracy skills. There is a whole plethora of skills that our children are using when play has the opportunity to be extended from this regimented kind of strict, this is what you must do.
Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real life stories. If you're a new mom and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? This podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
Welcome to the next episode of this conversation around our relationship with screens. We are very fortunate to have Hannah Hagon from Unplugged Tots with us. In the first conversation, Hannah, we talked about the problem with screens, or the nuance of screens, and how do we help our kids, tots, teens, even us as adults have a better relationship with screens. We talked about the three different types of screen time and the idea of this healthy diet that we have. And we also made the important point, or probably the most important point at the end of the conversation, which is around not giving yourself such a hard time, because everybody has this problem. We want to be aware of it. And what we want to do in the next half an hour is to really give some of those useful tools to parents that are thinking, you know what, I do want to give my kids and help my kids with that. This is going to be a practical conversation of the how-to. How do we develop, how do we help our kids have a good relationship with screens? So Hannah, is there anything you want to set to set the scene, and then we can jump into the conversation? Where do we start?
So where do we start? I think the main place, Patrick, is essentially play. And play doesn't have to be prescriptive. Play can happen anywhere. Learning can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be sat doing worksheets. And I think that's the main point that I want to get across. Every single experience that you have with your child is an opportunity for them to learn. And I think that when we give our children that opportunity, we're giving them this whole holistic toolkit that they'll need as they kind of journey through their academic career and into their actual careers. So there's an awful lot of work that I've done with, so I mainly work with early years. So we're kind of talking 2.5 and upwards. And a lot of it is about listening to the children and giving them agency to control where their learning goes. Because I believe that for too long we have dictated too much of what we want them to learn, and actually our children, are our best teachers.
Good. Give me an example of that, Hannah. So show me like what we typically do, where we kind of dictate what we've done. I can relate to that, absolutely. And then give me an example of what that would look like, or what would that shift look like, where we're like, you know what, we're listening to them and giving them more agency.
I think we touched in the previous episode about Lego, and I think, as you said, that is the best example of prescriptive play that can turn into creative play. You know, you've got this set of rules that actually, incidentally, is an algorithm which I kind of go into in my book, that a child has to follow. But usually that's where it stops. And actually what we need to do is extend it further into, now you can create this wonderful world using your imagination. So a good example is I was running an event at the Discover Story Centre in London, an absolutely beautiful museum. It is one of my most favourite places. It's a museum designed wholly for 0 to 11-year-olds, and it's
Mm-hmm.
based on
I
stories.
know that.
It's
Great.
just gorgeous.
Yes.
And so I was there and I was making cloud dough, which is essentially corn flour and hair conditioner. So you
Okay.
mix it up and it turns into very, very similar consistency to Play-Doh,
Right.
but it's got this amazing aroma depending on what flavor hair conditioner that you use. So you've got this complete kind of sensual overload because your kids are using their hands. They've got this sensory thing going on as well. And I had kids, I mean, the session, I can't remember how long the sessions were. The kids were sitting there for like 2, 3 hours.
Yeah.
Hours creating. I had octopus, giraffes, elephants, mice, hedgehogs, because they'd done the learning element, but then they were in the creating element. And, just seeing this joy and one, Mum, look what I did.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
parents were just, oh, this is so good. And
Yeah.
that is what we need more of, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
This opportunity for play, for learning through play, for children to be creative, because it is when they are creative that they encounter problems, that they
Yeah.
have to fix the problems, that they end up kind of talking to people sitting next to them, which forces them to articulate potential problems or conversations. So they're practicing their oracy skills. There is a whole plethora of skills that our children are using when play has the opportunity to be extended from this regimented kind of strict, this is what you must do
Great.
mentality.
And I'm thinking about I think about different scenarios that I encounter as a parent and as new mums. And obviously time and intent is kind of the two big variables, right? There's the weekend when you do have some time, maybe in and amongst the cleaning the house and
Yeah.
all the washing, where you take 2, 3 hours to go to Discover Center and you do that kind of play. There'll also be some where, you know what, I've got some work I need to do for the afternoon. I can't preside over the events, and I just don't have that time. But I also want my kid to be doing some stuff. So, can you give me some examples of maybe the different categories of play that you talk about, or learning through play in the book, where it might just be like the half-hour activity versus the more intentional where I do have some time, versus maybe I'd love my kids to do something outside of paying screen times for a couple of hours, but I'm not going to be there. Or maybe it's one, like there are different scenarios that every parent will um, have a need to engage with the work that you're doing. Again, everything from I've got the afternoon to spend with my kid, I'm going to take them down there, versus like I just need you to not bother me for like an hour
Yeah.
once I get eating done type thing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to give you like I don't want to let you play Roblox for an hour to shut you up. So can you talk to me a bit about what some of the key elements within the book and those kind of scenarios that most parents will encounter?
So I kind of often get asked this question. A lot of it does have to do with, it does depend on my kind of capacity levels. So I think that is kind of what you're kind of what
Yes,
you're
yeah, yeah,
asking as well.
yeah. I just don't have the
Um,
time for stuff, right?
and one of my kind of favorite ones is my sorting out the washing,
Okay,
because
yeah,
frankly, everyone has to do it, Patrick.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so why not get our kids involved in that? So there may be a lot of facilitation from us to start with, but
yes,
actually, we can encourage our children to pair up the socks. We can encourage our children to work out which t-shirt belongs to whom within the family. We can
yes,
encourage them to, look at the maybe count, depending on the ages that they are, count how many items are in each individual's pile. Those kinds of things can keep a child entertained for a really long time. I've done it with my two, and
yes,
actually at the end of it, you do have piles of washing, but they're
Yeah.
now in piles of who they belong to. So it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
adding
Yeah.
to
Yes.
your workload. You're just facilitating some opportunity for learning for your children, because they're practicing their observation skills, they're practicing their pattern recognition skills. And
Yes. Yeah.
if they are then, if you've taught them how to fold the top of the socks over, whoa, you've just taught them some really good, fine motor skills as well. Getting those
Right.
dexterous fingers working is
Yes.
really, really good. You've then got, conversely, when you're hanging out the washing, you can get them to clip on the socks with pegs as well. And pegs are really good at practicing their fine motor skills as well for when they come
That's
to
great.
pen
Yes.
pen work later. So that's kind of low capacity. Another low capacity one. Am I right to go for another one?
I go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is one of my favorites. I'll get some blocks. Lego. I know we've mentioned Lego. So Lego or Duplo. So depending on the age, obviously you don't want to be doing Lego if they're too little because of choking hazards and stuff. But you get some blocks, literally 2 different colours, and you start building repeating patterns.
Mm.
And that's good for later on when they start looking at loops and things like Scratch. So you kind of have to do repeating
Yeah.
patterns,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of continuing that journey of computational thinking. And then you can bring in extra colors. So bring in like a third one, and then you can bring in this element of debugging. Well, what's gone wrong? Let's swap one round. So it's wrong. What's gone wrong in this pattern?
Yeah.
You know,
Good. Good.
and so again, that is a little bit of kind of two-way conversation. So it's not necessarily, I need you to kind of go away and do something, but you can get your child to like build me 5 models of this, and I'll come back in a little bit of time, and you can show me what you've done. But then you're scaffolding. This is a word that I talk about a lot. You're scaffolding the time and the learning for your child. So
Good.
you're not just leaving them. You're leaving them to do independent play. And
I
that is
love that.
one of the most important things that we can give our children, is this ability to be independent and this
Great.
ability to play independently. And if they end up building like a Lego or Duplo I don't know, mansion, then who cares?
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think that's great. Yeah, and there's 2 points I'd love to come back to because they really resonate with me. One is this idea. First of all, I wanted to challenge the cynical parent that's hearing this. And there's a bit of me going there saying, "Yeah, that sounds all great, and I'll never get my kids. My kids will never fold my washing and stuff like that." And I can definitely hear those voices, right? Oh, this sounds great. She's done it with her kids, but my kids are not like that. They would never do the washing. They just want to watch. They want to play like Xbox, etc. And there was an element of me when I first did that, but I think so much of it is how you engage in the activity with the
Yeah.
kid. Because I've had, and not every time, right? This doesn't work every single time, but there have been a healthy number of successes where kids want to feel valuable,
Yes.
right?
They
That's
love a
probably the key
job.
thing.
They
They
love a job.
Yeah, and they want to have that sense of value, right? Everyone feels. I mean, even as adults, we can appreciate like you want to feel valued, right? And so when you go through that and you're saying that how to fold the socks set, you're making it a game. Part of it is obviously how you engage with it as a parent with your kid. If your kid's just like, "Hey, fold the tops and just go over and match them," and it's like, well, obviously your kid knows that you don't really care much about that because again, it's the tone, it's the conversation, the way that you're engaging with it. Whereas if you're there with them, and again, it takes time, right? And we have to learn how to do this sometimes. But you're engaging with them in doing this stuff. They can sense that it's valuable to you. You sense the value. They sense the value that you see in them. So I guess I'm trying to um, challenge those imaginary cynicisms that you might get, where that sounds great, but Hannah's completely unhinged. Like, what's she talking about? I'll get my kids to follow my code. Like, no, but I've personally seen that. So that's the first thing I would do, and emphasize the importance of kids want to feel valued, and how do you as a parent engender that to whatever activity that is, whether it's doing the washing up or pairing a sock. So I think some really useful things in your book that you can just give you some ideas. And then the second thing was I think often as parents, and again I struggle with this, is we kind of forget how to play with our kids. Or
Yeah.
maybe not even forget, we forget to learn how to play with our kids, because as you're saying, you're so consumed, as every working parent is, with just the work stuff, and looking after the kids is an extra outlay that you have to, like, sometimes you just don't have the capacity to do it, especially when you're a new mum, and you're like, physically, emotionally, psychologically just spent. You're like, I can't sit down with you, Johnny, and play 2 hours of bloody Lego right
Yeah,
now. Like, I'm not going to sit down with
yeah,
you. So, but I think what's great about the ideas in your book, or just the philosophy behind Unplugged Tots, is yes, there will be, like, maybe an initial high outlay of time and investment to get them, but eventually it's to get to a calmer, more independent child that just can find out what they can do for themselves. And I think it's that trade-off, right? There's an investment as the parent, as the mum, as the father, to get this ball rolling. And
absolutely.
oftentimes it's a level of effort that we just don't have the time or the inclination for. But then what happens is that then becomes a high effort every time
Every
you
time.
engage with it thereafter. Whereas if you do the hard work now, I guess it's the same with anything, right? I don't know, learning a new skill,
Hmm.
or learning to, like, do things, I don't know, investments or whatever. Like, you put in the hard time up front, and then hopefully over time it gets easier. And it's not going to be a straight line, like it gets easier and easier and easier. There'll be times where it's really bloody hard, even
Yeah,
after the fifth time, 10th time, 20th time. But eventually you get there. And I can certainly attest to that. So I think I just wanted to compliment, I think, a couple of the things that as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, I get that. I personally can get into that. Because we often, and we talked about this yesterday, we often um, take responsibility for our kids' boredom, right? And
oh
and talk to me
gosh.
about the boredom void, which I thought was an interesting concept. So talk to me about that, Hannah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and I see it with my own children even now. It's like, oh, mum, I'm bored. When I used to say it to my mum would be like, only boring people feel bored. And I'd be like, what? And I'd be like, oh, that's really mean. Um, but it's that kind of thing though. It's like, why is boredom a problem? Why is um not having anything to do a problem? God, I would love to have nothing to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there are so many things that I would love to fill that time with, that are creative, that are nourishing to my heart and my soul. But I think in filling that boredom void for our children by dictating what it's filled with, rather
Yes.
than them telling us what they want, we are pushing them down the pathway. So
Mm.
generally, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, generally what happens is when a child says, I'm bored, I've got nothing to do, it's filled with pixels. It's filled with screen use. It's filled with, oh, just go and watch something, or go and play something on the telly, or the screen. And actually, when we allow our children to sit with boredom, they end up finding something to do. They pull out
Mm.
some jigsaws, or they pull out the um, bits of paper and some colouring pencils, or they make a den. It might end up being that we have to facilitate some stuff to help them transition away from the screens and into play-based reality. And that's okay. That's fine. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
allowed. But actually, when they are aware of what they are capable of, they then find their own entertainment. But
Yes.
when you give them space to be creative, they could end up finding their passion. They could end up finding their thing that they love, because they've been given an opportunity, some space,
Yeah.
some time, some freedom. And
Yeah.
by us constantly filling this with, I don't know, after school clubs, or packed schedules. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, whatever, you do you, but be mindful of what you are displacing again
Yeah.
by doing this, because
Yeah.
we have an opportunity here where we are not allowing children to be creative, to learn an instrument, to learn what their passions are, to overcome struggle and
Mm.
problem solving.
Yep.
because they genuinely want to achieve something, because it's something they're interested in, not something they've been told to do. And
Yeah.
those, again, build so many more lifelong skills that are critical to our
Yeah.
children's development.
Yeah. There's so much. There's so much. I think wisdom in that in everything you just said is, you know, we often see our child's boredom as our problem to fix. And it's like, I've had my kids say, "What can I do now, Dad?" And
Yeah,
basically subtext, "Can I watch TV or
yeah,
iPad?" Like, no. But what can I do then? It's like, well, I don't know. Do what you like. It's like, okay, I'm going to watch TV. It's like, no. And then it's that vicious cycle where you're like, what I'm picking up and what I really agree with is our kids' boredom is their problem to solve.
yeah,
And it's a difficult thing
yes,
because, if I just say go, it is difficult. And again, it's that initial outlay where, look, the quick fix is to turn the bloody TV on.
yeah,
It's instant. And I think it is that low friction, low effort solution that creates a bigger problem in future. And I think and again, look, again, this is not to throw mum guilt or parent guilt because we've all done that, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think it's just, again, it's the education and the awareness that in future there is real value in taking some time when you can to kind of set up, and that's what I think Unplugged Tots does, is to set up. There is a roadmap to getting to a better place.
yeah,
There
there
are some
definitely is.
structured. There's a framework. There's some principles, so that you don't have to always figure this out for yourself. I mean, a lot of people do. Some people don't. But there is tried and tested things that you can say, like, here's how to get to a better place, so that you're not wasting. Because we don't have all the time to waste to figure this stuff out, right?
No,
So it
exactly.
would be helpful to have someone show us the way, and to say, and to hear from other people, like, in the conversations that you have in your group discussions, to say, like, hey, look, I have this problem too. And to feel like, oh, you know what, it's not just me, right? So I think there's a lot of real value, I think, in the things you're putting out there, and the ideas that, yes, you know what, our kids' boredom is their problem to deal with, and it is a problem we should encourage them to figure out for themselves. It's going to be painful. It's going to suck.
Yeah,
You're going to have like tantrums,
yeah,
and the very first time it happens, they're going to scream. They're not going to like it. And again, probably the longer you leave that problem, the bigger it
yeah.
gets.
You're
You
kicking the
know,
can down the path.
the 2-year-old kicking up a tantrum right now because he can't have his screen time. When that kid's 14 or 15, then you've
Yeah,
got a real challenge in your hands, because
yeah,
you've just, again, neurologically, expectation wise and socially, you've grown accustomed to always having that. So why the hell would you stop me now, right? Yeah,
exactly.
you didn't have a problem when I was 2. Like, why have you got a problem when I'm like 14, right? So look, I'm not saying I see it. I'm as guilty as the next person of kicking the can down the road. But again, I think hopefully we're starting to shift the conversation now. Like, there's a parental mindset shift we're talking about, which is the beginning of how we start to address this problem in a constructive way. We're raising awareness that there is going to be some friction, there is
Yeah,
going to be effort involved to
yeah,
get there. But ultimately, the reason people like yourself are out there is that there is a better future that we're building towards that we think is more beneficial for everybody, for you as a parent, you as the mom, you as the kid. That, this is why that's why you've got the ear of the Raspberry Pi founder, which is
yeah.
crazy
Yeah, no,
amazing,
right.
right? So no, that's incredible. I think I'm really glad that you're out there doing this stuff. You also talked about some other, was it perfect activity to do with kids? I mean, was that an example? But I had that in my um a couple of notes to come back to, like some more examples, like the folding your thing.
Lego.
What other
Oh
anything that
gosh.
comes to mind?
Well, so there's so many in my book. One of my favorites, and it's still my 10-year-old and I's. It's one of our favorite things to do is jigsaws.
Okay. Yep.
Jigsaws can literally grow with a child. So when she was little, she loved the little, the little ones that have literally kind of like the animal shapes, and you kind of have to put them in the right
Yeah.
shapes and
Yeah.
stuff. And then you kind of progress up to, 10 pieces and things like that. Jigsaws give children a wonderful opportunity to practice their observation skills, to practice their pattern recognition skills, to practice deconstruction. So, deconstruction is one of the core computational thinking themes, and it's basically breaking big problems down into smaller, easier to manage chunks. So when
Yes.
we talk about that, we talk about finding all of the edge pieces and then putting all the edge pieces together first, and then we put in the middle pieces next. And obviously you can do it in whatever way you like to do, but this is the very first activity in my book because it's so easy and accessible. I mean, you have to pop to a shop to go and pick up a jigsaw, but it's a way to get the concept of deconstruction and breaking problems down into a child-friendly activity, into child-friendly language.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is, so Emily is 10, my youngest. We have spent nearly some point every single weekend doing a jigsaw in her life. And it's
Wow.
our time. It's
Yes. Yeah.
our
Yeah.
one-on-one time. And I mean, obviously, every mother and child has a different relationship with their children's stuff. We have our ups and downs, but she knows that that's our time, protected time, and we have, a cup of tea or she has a hot chocolate, and we're working away, we're doing our stuff, and Mum, this happened at school today, or so and so said this to me at school today, and the teacher was doing this, and we were learning about this. The conversations that have come out of this environment have been absolutely magic. And
Yeah.
that's what I want to bring to my child's childhood life
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
them knowing that I am here for them. And that's
Yeah.
not
Good.
like to shame or, cast shade on anyone who is, not able to do jigsaws or have the time to do it. It's like, that's a core value for me and what I want to be as a parent. Um, and so I think using play as a way to connect and show what connection is a really, really valuable thing. There are times when I say, Emily, hun, I've just got to do this. Go and do as many pieces of the jigsaw as you can, and I'll come back in, half an hour or something. So, I'm not painting myself as this perfect parent by any way, shape, or form, Patrick. But, I think the fact is that it's scaffolded. This learning has been scaffolded so she knows how to do X, Y, and Z with whatever
Yeah.
activity she's doing because I've invested that time, as you say,
Yeah.
early on in the childhood so that she can facilitate her own entertainment.
Yeah, I love that example, Hannah. I can bring up an idea that I do with my kid, but going back to the puzzle thing, one is saying it's intentional, right? It's could be half an hour, 1 hour, and it's what it does is it ticks so many boxes because one, it's a space where I come back to again, the kid feels valued around whatever that is doing, like that she feels valued in that space because it's just for her. A second thing is what that enables you to do, because again, it allows other conversations to come in because you can ask them about what goes on at school. Like, who's ever tried to ask their kid what they did at
Ugh,
school after
yeah.
school, right? And it's like, just had lunch. What do you do? Don't know. Like, so that's that. And then hopefully what you can do, it can also be a win for you where that can be a bit of downtime for you as the parent, where we all need to have a little bit of, and again, typically it's Netflix or it's on my phone, but just half an hour with a kid where they're in a certain state because they expect to be in that state.
Mhm.
It's not hyper crazy. It's just like it's downtime. So that can also benefit you. So what I've started to do with our kids is, again, this is not to prescribe a view. Like it's whatever it works for you. Find an activity that you enjoy with your kid, and that's going to change over time. But we just say, on a Saturday, we have half an hour where we just go out and we go to a coffee shop and I treat her to a hot chocolate and I have a coffee and we just talk about something. I said, you can ask me anything you want to, and I'll talk about it, whatever, right? So obviously, the first time he asked me, he talked about poo, right?
Yeah,
So
of
talk
course.
about poo for half an
Standard.
hour.
Yeah.
But that's become like a nice thing that we share, and that's our thing. Now, it doesn't have to be that, right? It can be, again, it could be puzzle making, it could be reading, whatever that is. Like, find your thing, and there's effort involved in finding whatever thing you is going to be your thing for you and your kid because you're all individual. I keep saying my kids saying, "Oh, we're all unique." I say, "Yeah, but you're all unique, so you're not." So,
Yeah.
so I just think again, I think there are some really golden principles to what you're talking about. Um, you know, finding that time. Yes, it's an extra effort, but over time that become it can become such a valuable space and like a cornerstone of how you organize it. Because you know that half an hour just for you, you've got to block it out. As you know, we talk about managing our time with our diaries when, you know, you've got 100 meetings a day or whatever you've got, like a busy diary. But you put something in the diary that is as important as another meeting because it is over time, it
Yeah,
compounds,
definitely.
right? And that then opens up, who wouldn't want to have that relationship? So yeah, I think that's a lovely specific example. And again, I know you've got tons more in the book, but yeah, I think it's nice to get to really go into the value of exploring those things. And again, it might take some time. It won't be the first time you do a puzzle, like, you know, Johnny, you're gonna love this, right? It's me and you time. He might hate it, and then you have to maybe find a few more and think about what that evolves over time, and maybe just find that one thing. So yeah, I just think it's good to kind of break that down, right?
Yeah, I just want to add one more point to that is when we are looking at screens, children are chasing the dopamine high.
Mm,
That's why it's there. That's why they want to go on screens. So when I talk about the unplugged entertainment, we almost have to compete with the dopamine that children feel when they are
yeah,
watching screens. So we want to
yeah,
make sure that the experience that our children have with screen-free play gives them that dopamine fix that they're seeking. So
yeah,
make it fun, put on some music, do a kitchen disco, make it so that they're kind of moving their whole body. So one of the things I talk about is embodied cognition, where we are actually utilizing the whole body. So we're utilizing our heart, mind, senses, everything, you know, our hands and everything. And that feeds this dopamine fix that our children are craving. And so
yes,
it is kind of going back to balance again. It's about making sure that the balance is kind of tipping into the screen free kind
yes,
of, you know, favor a little bit more, because we want them to value that time that is screen free. So it's a lot about, I mean, I talk a lot about kind of pressing pause on screens, doing unplugged play first and then screens later, because what
yeah,
sometimes happens is, you know, I say to my well said to my two when they were a lot younger, oh, I'll just do this now for 5 minutes, just, you know, get the Lego out 5 minutes and then you can go on the screens. 45 minutes later, they're still playing because
yeah,
they've got that dopamine hit. Mum, look at
yes,
this. They
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need the screens. And I know that's not the same in every family. I completely get that, but
mm,
it's worth trying first. Let's just
yeah,
try this first. Let's just
yeah,
do, I don't know, yeah, Lego, or do some colouring or do some pattern making on a piece of paper or something.
yeah. I think it's also normalizing the dopamine levels, right? Again, I made an analogy with food. Is like the dopamine rush you get with screens is up here.
Mm.
And then when that becomes normalized, everything else is like a shade of gray compared to that. Whereas if you start here and actually that healthy diet analogy where they are getting used to actually a normal level of dopamine that we give is around here, like let's call it mid-level. And then you'll have the spikes, as in, you know, you have the sugar craving, you go after that. But if your diet is just sugar, you're always going to want more sugar, etc. And the same with screens, where that dopamine intensity you get from watching you know, whatever you watch on screen is you can never compete because it's such a high level. We always want more. But when you get sensitized, when that becomes normalized, you're always going to be chasing another something even higher than that. So if you start your baseline at, let's play some Lego for 5 minutes or a puzzle, etc., you're trying to normalize this level of dopamine exposure that we get. And look, we can all identify with that. You know,
Yeah.
we're all pleasure seeking animals,
Yeah.
right? But we all
Absolutely.
know that, you know, the difference between, what is it, pleasure versus happiness, right? Pleasure is short, intense, is great, don't get me wrong, but if it's all we ever seek, then we're never going to be long-term happy. Now,
Yeah.
that's obviously probably a deeper philosophical
Yeah.
conversation now, but it is the basis, I think, for, again, what do we want? We want happy, healthy, strong kids, right? We don't want pleasure-seeking, crazy animals, which, you know, we sometimes get.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Right?
true. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, again, some real just wisdom, and just when you step back from it, just some common sense thinking
Yeah.
that I think you kind of you paint out as you talk about Unplugged Tots. So yeah, I think some really hopefully some healthy practical, valuable ideas that parents can start to think about. So yeah, thank you, Hannah. This has been really, really great to chat to you. I'm sure there's far more we can talk about
Yeah, no
in this
doubt.
space, but I'm hoping that these two conversations just paint a picture for people. It gives them, as you're saying, a weight off their shoulders that one, everyone faces this problem. Two, there are some practical things you can do about it. You don't have to just accept that, right? And there is a better future ahead, to manage what is going to be a more digital world, right? So, again, Hannah, thank you so much for the conversation. I'd love to do this again. Uh,
Absolutely.
Anything else you wanted to promote what you're doing? Again, the book's on Amazon. Is that right? Is that the
It's
main place
on
to find it?
Amazon. Yeah, Amazon, Waterstones. It used to be called Smith's now. What's it called? TG Jones or whatever. I can't
I don't
remember what
know.
the name of the shop is, but yeah, it's on all of the normal bookshops. It's in America, Canada, UK, and as of 2 days ago, Australia, which is very nice.
And
Um,
and wasn't it the best selling? Wasn't it best
it
selling?
was the #1 STEM best-selling new release for about 3 weeks in America. Thank you very much. Yeah, which is
Go get
which
it.
is
Go
funny
and get it.
because it's kind of screen-free STEM learning, which is brilliant. I mean, it has completely changed the trajectory of my life, Patrick.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased to hear that. And I think, again, it just shows you how much of a need there is in the market for this stuff. So you're onto something. It's clearly, there are parents out there and a need for this. So all the more to you. So Hannah, nothing more for me to say again, but thank you so much. I'd love to do this again. And please, if this resonates with people out there, let us know what you enjoy, if you'd like to hear from them again. And until then, thank you again, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Take
Take
care.
care. Bye.
Bye.